Welcome to another episode of ExecuBalance. Thank you for joining me today as we dig in and try to find different tips and tricks from some busy executives on how they balance their life. My name is Chad Crow. I'm the host of the podcast as well as CEO of Techwood Digital. I'm a father of 4 and a husband to 1, and so I know what it's like to have to struggle to find balance. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you for joining us. We're here with Peter Geckeler from Legacy Planning Advisors. Thank you so much for joining us.
Chad, it is a pleasure. I'm still a little convinced that you mistakenly sent me the email inviting me on here, and we're too polite to cancel. But
absolutely not.
It's a pleasure to be here with you, man.
Absolutely not. Now, obviously, just full disclosure too, you've helped me and my wife in a lot of different ways in your position as a financial planner. So I think we'll have lots of fun things to talk about.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it.
So I like to start off our segments mainly just so people can get to know you by talking through some of the roles that you're currently balancing or have balanced in your life. And I know as far as your work and your personal life.
Sure. Yeah. So first and foremost, I'd characterize my most important role as just being a Jesus follower. Because that really dictates all the other roles. I feel like I feel at this point. But I am a husband to Allison. I am a father to Roosevelt Diane. We call her Rosie for short. And she's 15 months old, and so that's been an adventure that I'm sure we'll talk about. I am a partner at Legacy Planning, financial planning firm. I'm a young life leader. I am a bourbon enthusiast. I am a
role we should totally talk about more. I was not aware.
I love it. Gosh, what else? I'm a foolishly hopeful Bulldog fan, so that's an embarrassing role that I fill. But I'd say that really quantifies the roles that I'm filling at this point.
That's a lot. I mean, especially a 15-month-old in a pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So what has that role felt like over the last kind of year as a new dad, like who has, you're a partner at a business and trying to figure out how do things balance back out?
Yeah, it's tough to find words to describe what it's been like. It's been a mixed bag for sure, because on one side of the coin, when all this started happening, we all went remote, like pretty much every other organization did. So from March to July, August, I got to be at home with Allison and Rosie, which under really no other circumstance would I've gotten to spend that much time with them. So what a gift that was. But then on the other side of the coin, there was navigating the dynamics of working from home. That was really my first time working from home, navigating the being a dad and a mom at home together, but I couldn't be with Rosie as much as Allison could. Then there was the family dynamics of Allison or Rosie not meeting some of our family members for 6 to 8 to even a year after she was born, just having to be as cautious as we could.
Wow,
so.
I didn't even think about that, like having to do first year where you're pretty much always on without any real support from mom and dad or the in-laws, or I know some of ours, it's been like really nice just like to say, okay, well, hey,
come on over,
go see grandma.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly was like, because the timing in some ways worked out where she was about 3 months when all of this really started to hit. So we'd gotten over the dark days, as I call them, of very minimal sleep. Yeah, but we were really looking forward to, with it starting to warm up, like actually being able to get out, because we pretty much were doing our personal quarantine of not exposing Rosie to the flu and all those things that happened in January and February. And then we were like, we're so excited for the sun. And then all of a sudden these little rumblings of, things are going to start shutting down soon came into the mix. And, there were a lot. So, the team at Legacy met Rosie for the first time a few weeks ago, which it's such a weird concept that people that I work with so much finally got to meet Rosie.
How important is that to you that they did get to meet her.
Yeah.
How does that play in, I guess, balancing your life?
Yeah, it was, for me, it was a really special moment, actually, because they'd gotten to see so many videos and pictures and such of her. And so it was a really special moment of them meeting her, plus just their understanding of me in my new role as a dad. We're a smaller organization. There's 9 of us in total. So the fact that we are together so much and talk about personal life so much, there was that patience that they provided, particularly in the early days, and then in the days of working from home, of me saying, guys, this is going to be a day where I'm really going to need more help because Rosie's sick, or, we're still trying to figure this thing out.
Or forgive the crying in the background. Yeah.
There's been a lot of that, more so with clients too, of, hey, we're covering your finances, but excuse the crying and the noise in the background.
I think that has been one of the most amazing things to watch through the pandemic is like the Zoom grace I think people get. It's like, yes. Oh yeah, the cat jumped up and that's cool. That's okay. We're all at home. Or the kids were on the, I don't know if you remember the video with the newscaster, like the viral video with the newscaster when his kids like snuck in the background. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, I know exactly
and
what
like,
you're talking about.
That was like so funny and weird, but then like now that's like normal. It's like, oh, it's cool. It happens.
Yeah. I was on it was like a really like formal investment, due diligence kind of webinar with this guy in a suit, and he had this background. And I don't know what happened, but it came tumbling down like on him, and behind him was like bunk beds. So you could tell he was like in his kid's room, and he was like, "I'm sorry, guys," but everyone got. I mean, to your point, there's grace there because everyone's having to do it at the same time.
At least with Zoom,
yeah,
Zoom
right.
Grace. There's Zoom grace abounds
Zoom
right
grace.
now.
Yes, exactly.
I think worldly grace could up a level. I wouldn't complain.
That's probably true. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And I think, one of the things for me too, we have 4 kids, and integrating work-life balance for me doesn't mean keeping them in 2 separate buckets. Like right. It's important that they intertwine appropriately.
Yeah.
And so I know for me, it was like the first time somebody from Techwood gets to meet my family, it's huge. Like I want them to love my kids just as much, because part of the reason why they work so hard is for those kids too. Yeah. And I want them to get the benefit of actually seeing and knowing how great I think my kids are.
Yeah.
So that when they're working there, they know that they're supporting my family just like I'm supporting them. That's also why I want to know about theirs. So.
Right. Exactly. No, I do love that, especially with the size y'all's organization is and ours, where it's just, there is that reality of being able to not only know your coworkers well, but also get to know their families. And that there's that loyalty piece to that, I think, which is huge.
I think too. I think integrating appropriately work-life balance and making sure that Rosie met your coworkers was really important. And I think that's a good kind of thing to focus on. And for young dads, as you make that transition back into the workforce from taking a break with your kid too, what are some other things that maybe you've noticed that have been kind of weird or strange as you've had to go back to work and leave Rosie at home?
Yeah, it's just been, there's that new feeling of just leaving and having to say Allison or tell Allison and Rosie bye, which is just a different dynamic when there's a little baby there. And Allison and I have really had to figure out what it looks like in our specific roles, with me leaving for 8 hours a day. And so she's staying at home at this point. So to say, like, when I get home, I've had a long day, but she's had a long day with Rosie. So figuring out what that evening schedule, that was one of the toughest challenges for us, because I would get home and just be exhausted from the normal work day, and
she's
here's the baby, and which was so fun and so great, but also a challenge just when you've had an especially long, worn out day. And that's where particularly that communication piece has been crucial for us early on. It was us both trying to read each other's minds on, did he have a good day? Did he have a bad day? Who's going to take over more because of that? And now if she's had a rough day, she explicitly says it, and then I know what my role is for the rest of the night, and then vice versa too. I mean, she shows me a lot of grace there too, where if I've had a long work day, even though she's been with Rosie over the course of the day, she's willing to help out with the bath time routine and the bedtime routine and all those aspects there.
Yeah, one of the big things I like doing with my wife and my kids every now and then is like things with code words. It's like, if you're feeling this way, give me a code word so that I understand how you're feeling. Right. Because I miss a lot of like visual cues. Yes. Like I'm an idiot.
That's just us
right?
guys.
Like, in general. so we play this like this game of like, okay, if I say spaghetti when I walk in the door, you know, like that means, you know,
that's a great idea. That would actually probably simplify the conversation down, or if it's just one word, it's okay, I get it, and we're moving on. I love that.
But that's great, and I think that's a huge level of consideration you have to start making when you're a new dad. You have to remember when you come home and you're tired that your significant other is just equally as tired. Just because they've, you know, especially if they're working from the house or they're a stay-at-home mom, it does not mean that they haven't worked just as hard.
Yeah. I mean, in most cases, harder, without a doubt. Yeah. Well, one of the things that's been good for me has been I've 3 stop signs before I get to my house, and one of my mentors even mentioned this to me a number of years ago, and it just stuck with my head. But he had a similar kind of commute home where he'd have like points where at each stop sign I'll just try to take a breath and you know, take a breath in and then just release it and then get to the next stop sign and go, okay. And more so it's just an activity of being, trying to re-engage and then be present when I do get home too. Because if I'm coming in with that same pacing and efficiency mindset that a lot of times I have at work, that's not going to go over as well at the house.
I love the intentionality of that too. Just finding those stops and giving yourself like 3 chances to take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a huge nugget, a huge nugget. Awesome. So I think we'll take from that. And I think another place that I would love to pivot and start talking about would be, you know, I'm a marketer.
Yeah.
Techwood's a marketing company. And for years, it's felt kind of like we're the shoe cobblers, kids. It's like you do marketing for everybody else, and then you don't do it for yourselves.
Right.
And it feels weird when you start doing it for yourself, and you figure a lot of things out. From the financial planning standpoint, how do you balance, working at home all day or working at work all day on finances and other people's finances? And I'm sure the last thing you want to do is go home and balance the checkbook, right? Like, that's generally true. I do. There is just this nerdy side of me that just loves tracking things and making sure that we are at least generally moving in a good direction from a financial standpoint. But it can be really tough to get out of that role. And in our first few years, we're actually still figuring it out. But when Allison and I would meet to talk about our finances, I would do so in a very formal manner, almost like I was meeting with clients. And she'd be like, who are you, right? Like, you could just talk to me. Like, we can have a normal conversation. So that dynamic was one that we had to certainly figure out. But I think the biggest thing for us is like everything else, just having consistent communication about it. And for her, Allison's done a great job of taking certain ownership pieces of the finances, because it would be easy for me to just cover it all and just say, all right, hey, you have any feedback? Okay, great, we can keep going. But her to take ownership pieces of it too. Is that something that you've encouraged her to do, or is that something she wanted to do? It was something early on that I was encouraging her to do, and she really didn't want to. It's amazing how this works. And then the more I backed off, the more she, when we would meet, would have more input. And then it slowly just became more of an organic thing where she was taking over certain pieces of the budget and covering certain things, which has been great. I mean, it's fun to watch her move into that role. And the other thing, so she's an artist, and she has her own company at this point in terms of creating art, and she has this
business spreadsheet, and that her learning that side of things, I think, has gotten her even more interested in the personal side of things as well.
Cool. I mean, I think so many people, and you've probably seen it in your job, husband and wives getting on the same page about finances. I think, again, with you kind of playing that role for me and Sarah in our life, helping people get on the same page. What are some tools or recommendations or things that you've done with your wife to ensure you get on the same page? I'll just to go ahead and say, I know one of the things we did with you is go through profiles and really trying to understand the way my wife looks at money and risk and the way I do. And then having somebody from a third party help us figure out how to make those work together when they don't necessarily want to.
Yeah, when they might not jive. Yeah. I think what you're probably referring to is we have all our clients go through this thing called financial DNA, which is almost like a Myers-Briggs, but with a financial tint to it. And that is just always, it's really good as an advisor to have that information, but for couples too, it's amazing the things that it reveals, just to say, hey, you're hardwired this way, and your hardwiring gets developed a lot of times before you're 2 or 3 years old, and you're hardwired this way. So this is probably where some of those conflicts come into the mix, is from hardwiring. And there's simple things that you can do to move you more towards the unified decisions. And so from a concrete standpoint, some of the things that we've done, we do have our own advisor. That's something that I would say is huge, just having that third party there. I mean, it's kind of like in a counseling setting, right, where you feel really strongly one way and she feels really strongly one way, and you need that objective ear to be able to say, these are the two things that I'm hearing, this, and let's talk about how we can move more towards the middle, like we're on the same team here. So having an advisor of our own has actually been huge for us. Another thing is we have like a kind of a template that we go through each time with the same questions, the same topics pretty much that we cover. And now that we've done that for about a year to a year and a half, we know exactly what to expect every time we meet on a monthly basis. So the questions we're going to cover, the topics that are going to come up. One of those is, do we have any big expenses coming up this month that one has in mind, but the other doesn't really have in mind at this point? And just answering that question has resolved a lot of issues on things that we ran into in the past, right?
So one key to one ring to rule them all. Just tell the other person before you spend a lot of money.
Exactly. Yeah. So just, I mean, like everything else, the communication is so key, and that's the same with finances too.
Personal question. Yeah. Do you and Allison have like a dollar mark? Like if it's above this, we're going to talk about it.
We don't have an explicit dollar amount, but what we do have is we each have kind of our fund money that we both get each month, and there's no questions asked on that amount. But if there's something that it would fall in that category and it's going to be over that amount, then it has to get talked about.
Need the increase in the bourbon budget this month.
Right. Huh? Hey, that conversation has been had actually pretty recently. We had that conversation, and sometimes it can be okay. That I'm fine with that if, and then
Oh, I need some more paint.
Right.
Let's balance it out.
Exactly.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Another kind of personal question, and again, just because I'm intrigued by what you do and how it integrates with your life. What about financial stress? Do you personally feel financial stress? I do. I mean, and a lot of times, which is interesting, right? Like you own a company that's doing well, and no matter how much money you make, I'm not immune to financial stress, which just bogs me. Like, do you feel it? How do you deal with it?
Oh, I 100% feel it. It's when you were asking that question, one of the things that came to mind, have you seen Forrest Gump?
Yeah.
My favorite movie of all time. I love Forrest Gump. And I'm thinking of that scene where he gets the letter in the mail and then, and he says, well, we invested in this fruit company, which was Apple. and I don't have to worry about money anymore. And I said, that's a good thing, because that's one less thing to worry about. And it's just such a funny scene to me, because financial stress, like we all have it across the board. Well, I think most people do, at least. And for me, I feel financial stress on a pretty regular basis. And some of that's tied to my history too. So my dad was a business owner, and he passed away in a plane accident. So, a total sudden, unexpected thing. And he was the main breadwinner for our family. I was 13 at the time. And so I can still vividly remember that moment, that day of finding out, and then the subsequent weeks and the question marks as a teenager of saying, all right, let me connect the dots here. My dad owned his business. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. So we're not going to have any money now. Like, what's life going to look like for me? And so having experienced that, I certainly still experience like the remnants of that insecurity around finances. And I think I made a unspoken pact of I never want to feel this financially unsecure, and I never want my family to feel that way either. So with that in mind, I can definitely feel that financial stress. But the big thing for me is not making that stress or that reaching for quote unquote financial security, which is a total myth. I mean, we have clients who have lots of money and they still feel financial stress, and there's no way they could ever run out of money based on their budget, but they still stress about it. So I think it's kind of there's some degree there where it's a myth, but going back to I definitely experience that financial stress, but it's I think the Lord calls us to not make money an idol, and not make that stress factor be to an unhealthy degree.
Right, and to your point, that stress of feeling at 13 has led to a personal mission, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I can only imagine what role did that play in you choosing the career path you're on.
Yeah, it was that was really the moment for me, was experiencing that. And then this is another huge God thing, but the owner of my company, Jerry, was the one who really helped to guide my mom through that process of selling my dad's business and life insurance proceeds. And so I actually got to watch as a teenager all of that occur, and that set me on certainly the path that I'm on today.
Oh, great. I think that's huge. I think there's a message in there of stewarding pain and hard times to spur you on to doing good things. I think that's 100% kind of what has happened in your life.
Yeah.
And so from there, just curious again, so Jerry, you said came in and really exemplified kind of how you can minister to somebody through those moments, and that spoke to you deeply. To go on to, I guess, Georgia and study it.
Yeah, exactly. So went on to Georgia, and while I was interested in financial planning as a whole, but at Georgia, there wasn't a degree program at that point. And then when I was a sophomore, they started a degree program. So another kind of perfect timing thing to where I was able to start that my sophomore year, continue along that track. And then when I graduated, was able to get the certifications and all the things that I really needed, and join Jerry's firm Legacy right after I graduated. So
that's amazing. And I feel like we just totally took a hard left turn just from talking about how to stomach financial stress to but again, I think it's huge that how do we as business owners, as businessmen, or women, or steward hard times and turn that into good things. And I think you have a great example in your life of that. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. And that's part of the reason why for everyone that I meet with, there's always a degree of finding out about their their personal history, because there's nuggets to pull out of that in terms of how they view money. Like we all have certain things that happen to us growing up, how we saw life growing up, what we thought about money growing up, that has way more impact than I think we give it weight when it comes to being an adult and how we make our money decisions.
Let me ask you a question on what do you think you do really, really well in balancing when you think of all the roles you play? Where do you feel you're really successful at right now?
Yeah, I think so. The areas that I've been particularly successful at recently is first saying no to a number of things, and that's where, as I think about the concept of balance right now, balance feels somewhat foreign. It's more so kind of a focusing and refining and letting other things drop that are less important. Frankly, so saying no to new things, refining the things that I used to enjoy doing, but saying, okay, there really isn't the time for that. And then an area I wouldn't say that I'm doing great in, but I'm trying to progress in, is just generally slowing down. I read this book about 8 months ago. It's called The Relentless Pursuit of, or The Relentless Elimination of Hurry. You heard or
I have not heard of it.
Okay.
No, but let's, I'm interested.
It's great. and kind of the whole concept of it is we're all moving at such this quick pace that it's not natural, really, at the end of the day. So the book provides concrete ways to just slow down really your life. One of those is a Sabbath. One of those is getting in the slow lane on the way to work, and just kind of teaching and getting in that muscle habit of being okay, of not moving at this hyper speed pace.
Pausing at stop signs before you get home.
Yes, that was one of the things that really came to mind for me, was doing that more often and more intentionally.
As you do that, what are some things that you're noticing, maybe for the first time, or enjoying?
Yeah. A big thing for me is weekends have looked significantly different, because I've particularly on Sundays, there was always this weight or stress about the next day, where it was almost like I was living Monday on Sunday, because I was thinking about it so much and trying to get prepped. And now we have this rhythm of when we wake up and go to church and go into a park and cooking a great meal together and just generally slowing down, and that has transformed the rest of my week, really. Just coming in feeling significantly more rested, and I think another piece too on the work side of things has been creating space for those conversations with clients that were unexpected, but being okay with going there. So not rushing through my agenda that I have in mind, but asking questions. And it's amazing when you ask a few personal questions, where that leads the conversation and how that can then impact counsel that we provide from a financial standpoint.
Wow, man, that's so good. I think it was Kevin Williams who was on the podcast last week. He talked a lot about the restaurant business being so transactional, and all of that. And that a big challenge for Chick-fil-A is, how do you get a teenage boy to see that person in front of you? And then the joy and the level of service that comes from that, like, explodes, right? Like, I can only imagine that when you slow it down and you give those moments a chance to organically happen, that you get a ton of satisfaction out of them, because that's your mission, is to help people. Yeah,
exactly. And it's so easy when we're running at this quick pace to just, for it to become transactional. I mean, honestly, and to, what's important for me and our team and anyone who works with couples with money is just to recognize the opportunity that we have, that a couple is opening up one of the most intimate pieces of their life to you in terms of their finances, and that we are called to steward that, and not just run through an agenda, but really interact and ask the good questions, but sometimes the tough questions too.
Yeah, there were tears in your office. I'm sure though, so I remember coming to your office and sitting down on a couch and thinking like, dude, I don't know if are we from financial planning or is this counseling session? And then there's a box of Kleenexes over here and then chocolate there, which, we're like, I don't know when we're going to need these things, but we used them all.
Yeah. I've gotten that question a number of times. Why is there Kleenexes? Why are there tissues in this room? You might find out. Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack though when you want to have when you and your wife want to get on the same page for finances. There's a lot of, like you said, history to unpack before you can find out how to speak the same language.
Yeah, there really is. I mean, money. What's universally interesting about money is that money can draw out so many symptoms of things where it's not the root of the thing, but you see it manifest itself in money decisions that get made. I mean, that's what I think is so interesting about money in general is, for example, there's that statistic that the biggest reason people get divorced or the most common fight is about money. Well, no, it's not. It's not about money. It's about something rooted, but it just manifested itself in money conflict. And a lot of times it's just getting to the heart of what that is. And that's why, when we get to know clients, we barely talk about money in the first meeting. It's all just discovering what's your history like, so this is interesting. I'm going to pose this question to you. I don't know if I did this in our first initial meeting. What's your first memory of money?
Ooh. It's going to sound horrible for me. I guess my first, I don't know. There's a couple. So one of my first memories is my parents used to give me and my sister a checkbook.
Yeah.
And make us balance it and keep our allowance that way. So it was like an old checkbook that it didn't go to an account or something like that. So that's one fond memory I have of them trying to teach me how to finance, how to. And I remember it being painful. I remember hating it.
Yeah.
Did it teach me anything? I'm sure it probably did subconsciously, but I just remember it as torture. And then I remember,
but who balances the money for Techwood?
Right. And then I do also remember money being something that made me, at the time, my mom transitioned to school full time from working. And so I remember money, or the lack thereof, being a big driver of kind of how I felt through middle school and feeling weird. Like I remember getting a big fight with my mom about the shoes I was wearing, the Walmart shoes versus the name brand shoes. And I remember being pathetically ugly to my mom about it and not understanding her situation.
Yeah.
And I think back to that time, and I think that was huge in the way I spend money, in a healthy way, but also in an unhealthy way.
Yeah.
One of the things I get so much joy and pleasure out of spoiling my kids now with money because of that, but I don't think it helps them.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting how we can, a lot of it will experience something, and then as parents we can tend to overcorrect, or you say, well, I didn't get the shoes I wanted, so now my kids will never go without nice shoes or the shoes that they want, but what does that create in them? Well, it can create a sense of entitlement, and so it's always interesting to me how we can overcorrect. But back to your story, I mean, that has impact with the financial decisions you make now and the way that you see provision around your family, I'm sure. Yeah,
dude, it does. It feels so pathetic now. Just because I look back and I always had shoes. Yeah. Whether or not I was going to have shoes was never a question. Right. And so now that I'm older, and it's like, dude, there are people out here who that is a question, and so it feels so pathetic.
Yeah. Well, we all have those memories like that, because you just don't, at that point you don't understand it, and yet still the implications of that thing has had an impact. I think everybody
could use as an exercise. Sit down and find those things, and then, to your point earlier, communicate those with your significant other so that y'all both are on the same page about where you're coming from with money. My wife grew up in a completely different money scenario than I did, whereas my family, I don't think had abundance of money, but they did fine. But my parents were very straightforward, and I knew exactly where we were financially and things like that. I think my wife was a little bit more oblivious to it growing up. And so I think that was definitely something where we have to continually talk and be on the same page, because I'm over here hoarding,
right.
you know, and she's over there and she's extremely kind. She's over there saying, let's give. She's not over there saying, let's spend. Yeah. She's saying, no, let's give it all the way. And I'm over here like, yeah, but what if we don't have it next week?
Yeah.
And so we have to be very intentional with those conversations, which I think is when you were talking about you and your wife sit down once a month to really talk about what you're going to do big money wise this month, and get that conversation out of the way. Because I also think sometimes you don't have it because you fear it being an uncomfortable conversation.
That's right.
Which is unhealthy, because I think having uncomfortable conversations over your shoulder changes your mentality and the way you interact. So I love your advice of just like, do it at the start of the month too. Just have that conversation, get it out of the way, get that uncomfortable conversation out of the way and off your shoulder.
Yeah, have that conversation. And two, one of the things we do is we always, there's always some reward around it. So whether it's going to Ginny's ice cream afterwards, that's an option. Having a bottle of wine while we talk about it. That's just those little simple things that can make it feel more fun and whimsical than it being this formalized business meeting where we talk about what we did wrong with our money over the past month. Just that it is something to get excited about. And for us now too, we obviously look over our expenses and our budgeting and such, but mostly where our conversations are around is what are the things that we're excited about that we can be saving towards? Like, what are dreams that I have or Allison has that we want to be putting money towards, and that creates a sense of excitement rather than, hey, we're just putting this amount in a general savings account every month.
I also remember a story when we were meeting with you about how you and your wife got on the same page with budgeting with a spreadsheet. It's having kind of, you said at one time your spreadsheet you used to give clients was just this bland, straightforward thing, and your wife was like, let's add some color. And how that helped your conversations with you and your wife. And honestly, it helped mine and my wife's, because she's absolutely more of a, we need a little color in our life type deal. And so I think having those conversations, getting on that same page, and having a budget for us was probably one of the bigger things. It's like, okay, it's something we can both look at and know sooner rather than later what the plan is.
Where the money's going. I mean, that's the biggest thing is, and I encourage all couples to do this, is to just have one I call it a magnifying glass month, where you just track everything and you say, all right, let's not talk about the amount we should be spending, but just track everything and see what those certain categories can be that are the troublemaking ones.
And you'll need a big reward for that month's conversation. I remember when we did that, it was like, you did what?
How did Yep. Yeah.
And then I remember you go, no, it's not about that right now. We're just trying to find out where the money's good. It's okay. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm over there like, where's that damn tissue? No, I was kidding.
Where is this money? Yeah. And isn't that amazing how we can, how the blame game can start and everything. And that's where occasionally having that third party to say, well, you both made the spending decision, so let's talk about not what happened, but where we can go from here. But yes, I fondly recall those conversations.
Well, thank you so much for joining and sharing a lot from your professional background, for sure. I think the financial thoughts and things that you shared come from kind of what you do, but from your personal life as well. And then I think some of the big, more meaningful nuggets that I've been able to come has been, slow down in your life. Take moments to pause so that you can recalibrate before you walk in the door. Integrate your life with your coworkers, introduce them to your family. And then I think the big one for me was just seeing how you've stewarded some of the pain you've experienced into a career and a mission, and tying your professional life to your mission, I think has been a huge contributor to what I would call is a huge success. I think you're an amazing person, Peter, and I've really enjoyed working with you.
Yeah, man, Chad, it's been a privilege to be on here, and thank you for sharing what you did, even about growing up. Like, I know that's a vulnerable place to go. So thanks for sharing that, and just for the opportunity to do this.
Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, man.